Rich man leaves family for a young woman. 8 years later, he meets his family in a restaurant and is frozen to discover Nathan Prescott adjusted his expensive tie in the mirror, avoiding his own reflection. Outside, the California sun was shining over Oakwood Grove, but inside the Prescott mansion, a storm was about to break. "Maggie, we need to talk," he said, as he walked into the kitchen, where his wife was making breakfast for their 10-year-old son, Ethan. Maggie, her brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail, looked at him with tired eyes. "Now? Ethan's going to be late for school." Nathan took a deep breath. "This is important." Something in his voice made Maggie stop. She turned to Ethan, who was rocking back and forth in his chair, lost in his own world. "Sweetie, can you go brush your teeth?" As soon as Ethan left, Nathan dropped the bombshell. "I'm leaving. I've met someone else." The silence that followed was deafening. Maggie stared at him in disbelief. "What? What do you mean, someone else?" "Her name is Amber. She's different. She understands my needs, my dreams." Maggie felt like she'd been punched in the gut. "And I don't? Your dreams are more important than your family? Than Ethan?" The mention of Ethan's name made Nathan hesitate, but only for a moment. "You'll both be fine. I'll take care of everything financially." "Money?" Maggie shouted, her voice rising. "Do you think that's what Ethan needs? A monthly check instead of a father?" At that moment, a high-pitched scream came from upstairs. "Ethan!" The noise of their argument must have upset him. Maggie ran upstairs, with Nathan reluctantly following her. They found Ethan on the bathroom floor, banging his head against the wall, a behavior they hadn't seen in months. "Ethan, no!" Maggie knelt beside him, trying to calm him without touching him, knowing that contact could make things worse. Nathan stood frozen in the doorway, the reality of his decision hitting him like a freight train. For a moment, he was transported back in time. It was Ethan's 10th birthday just a few weeks ago. Against all odds, Ethan had smiled when they blew out the candles together. Nathan had felt a wave of love so intense it nearly knocked him over. It was one of those rare moments when Ethan seemed truly happy and connected. Ethan's scream brought him back to the present. Maggie finally managed to calm the boy, who was now silently sobbing in her arms. "How can you do this to him?" Maggie asked, her words laced with pain and anger. "To us?" Nathan felt the guilt growing in his chest, but the image of Amber, young and carefree, flashed in his mind. "I'm sorry," he muttered, knowing the words were inadequate. "Get out," Maggie said, her voice trembling. "Get out now." Nathan hesitated, looking at Ethan. The boy wouldn't look at him, lost in his own world of anguish. With one last glance at the scene in front of him, Nathan turned and walked down the stairs. He grabbed the suitcase he had already packed and walked out the front door. Standing at the entrance, he looked at the house one last time. Through the upstairs window, he could see Maggie holding Ethan. For a moment, he almost changed his mind. But then his phone buzzed. A message from Amber. "I can't wait to start our new life together." With a shaky sigh, Nathan got into his luxury car and drove off, leaving behind the wreckage of the life he once knew. Back in the bedroom, Maggie held Ethan, silent tears streaming down her face. As the sound of Nathan's car engine faded into the distance, she made a silent promise. "Never again, Ethan. We'll never depend on him again. It's just you and me now, and we're going to be okay." Ethan, still trembling, didn't respond. But for the first time that morning, he looked into his mother's eyes, a small moment of connection in the midst of chaos. Outside, the sun continued to shine over Oakwood Grove, indifferent to the drama unfolding inside the Prescott mansion. For Nathan, Maggie, and Ethan, nothing would ever be the same. Nathan's abandonment marked the beginning of a journey none of them could foresee. A journey of pain, growth, and perhaps eventual redemption. 3 months had passed since Nathan left his family. The Prescott mansion, once full of life, now felt eerily empty. One Saturday morning, Maggie found a thick envelope in the mailbox. Inside, there was a substantial check and a note from Nathan. "To help with the expenses, please accept." Maggie stared at the check, her hands trembling with anger. Without hesitation, she ripped the check into pieces and threw it in the trash. "We don't need your charity, Nathan," she muttered to herself. That night, after Ethan had finally fallen asleep, Maggie turned on her laptop. Hesitant, she began typing, "My name is Maggie, and this is my story of raising an autistic son alone." The words flowed easily, and before she knew it, Maggie had written several pages. She decided to turn it into a blog, hoping it could help other mothers in similar situations. Meanwhile, Nathan had moved into a luxurious apartment with Amber. "We need more space," Amber insisted, flipping through a home decor magazine. "How about a trip to Paris next month?" Nathan agreed absent-mindedly, his mind wandering to Ethan and Maggie. Guilt consumed him at night, but during the day he felt a strange relief from the responsibilities of a family with special needs. At school, Ethan faced his own challenges. His broken routine left him more anxious and prone to meltdowns. The other students, not understanding his behavior, began to tease him. "Hey, weirdo," a boy shouted during recess. "Where's your dad? Did he leave because you're strange?" Ethan shrank back, covering his ears and rocking back and forth. A teacher intervened, but the damage had already been done. At home, Maggie noticed the changes in Ethan. He had become quieter, having frequent nightmares. Many nights she found him quietly crying in his room. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, holding him gently. "Mommy's here." But when Ethan finally fell asleep, it was Maggie who cried silently, feeling the weight of her new reality. Maggie's blog, however, began to gain followers. Her honest words about the daily struggles resonated with other parents. Supportive comments filled each post. "Thank you for sharing your story, Maggie. I feel less alone. Your words gave me the strength to face another day." Maggie was surprised by the comfort she found in writing and the community she was building online. Nathan, on the other hand, was trying to adapt to his new life. One Sunday afternoon, he passed by the old house, watching from a distance. He saw Maggie and Ethan in the garden, planting flowers. For a moment, he felt a pang of regret, but Amber quickly called him, reminding him of an appointment. Weeks turned into months. Maggie developed a routine, balancing work, caring for Ethan, and her growing blog. Her determination grew each day, fueled by her love for her son and the support she received online. One morning, Maggie received a call from Ethan's school. Her heart sank when she heard the principal's serious voice. "Mrs. Prescott, there's been an incident with Ethan. He had a severe meltdown and hurt another student. I'm afraid he's suspended until further notice." Maggie collapsed into her chair, the reality of her situation hitting her full force. How would she handle this alone? How could she work and take care of Ethan full time? At that moment, she realized that despite her determination, the challenges ahead were far greater than she had imagined. Ethan's suspension wasn't just a setback, but a turning point that would require all her strength and resources. With trembling hands, Maggie opened her laptop. Maybe, she thought, sharing this new struggle with her online community could bring not only support, but also ideas and solutions she couldn't see on her own. As she typed, Maggie felt a mix of fear and resolve. No matter how hard it was, she would find a way to overcome this. For Ethan, she had to. 3 years had passed since Nathan left his family. Maggie, now 38, sat in her office, staring at the email on her screen. It was the third time that month her request for time off to care for Ethan had been denied. "Mrs. Prescott, your frequent absences are affecting your performance," her boss's email read. "You should consider finding someone to take care of your son." Maggie closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to contain her anger. She knew she was being discriminated against for being a single mother of a child with special needs. After months of enduring veiled comments and unfair treatment, she made a decision. "Enough," she muttered, opening a new email. With determined fingers, she began drafting a formal letter detailing every incident of discrimination. It was time to fight back. Meanwhile, 20 minutes away, Nathan wandered through the rooms of his new mansion. Amber was rushing around, barking orders at the decorators. "What do you think, honey?" Amber asked, showing him an abstract art piece. Nathan shrugged. "Whatever. Choose whatever you want." Amber frowned but quickly turned her attention back to the decor details. Nathan walked to the balcony, gazing at the horizon. The view was spectacular, but he felt strangely empty. That afternoon, Maggie took Ethan, now 13, to his session with Dr. Liam, a therapist who used innovative approaches for autistic children. "Ethan has made incredible progress," Dr. Liam remarked, showing Maggie a drawing Ethan had made. "His ability to express emotions through art is remarkable." Maggie smiled, proud. "He's been drawing a lot at home, too. It's like he's finally found his voice." Ethan, sitting in the corner of the room, looked up from his sketchbook and smiled briefly at his mother before returning to his work. That night, after putting Ethan to bed, Maggie turned on her computer to update her blog. What had started as a personal journal had evolved into an influential platform for parents of autistic children. As she wrote about her decision to sue the company, Maggie received an email that took her breath away. It was from a state legislative assistant informing her that her blog had inspired a proposed law to protect the rights of working parents with special needs children. "I can't believe it," Maggie whispered, tears of joy filling her eyes. At Nathan's mansion, a heated argument was underway. "Nathan, we've been together for 3 years now," Amber said. "I want to have a baby." Nathan froze, his wine glass halfway to his mouth. "A baby?" "Amber, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" she retorted. "We have money, space. What's missing?" Nathan didn't answer, but Ethan's image flashed in his mind. Days later, Nathan was scrolling absent-mindedly through social media when a picture caught his attention. It was Ethan, older than he remembered, holding an art trophy. The shy smile on the boy's face made Nathan's heart ache. Reading the caption, Nathan discovered that Ethan had won a local art contest. His initial pride quickly gave way to a crushing wave of regret. "I should have been there," he murmured, touching the phone screen as if he could reach his son through the image. At that moment, Nathan realized just how much he had missed. It wasn't just the big moments, like this award, but the small daily victories and struggles that made up Ethan's life. The realization hit him hard. While he had been building a life of luxury with Amber, he had left behind something far more valuable. The massive house and expensive cars suddenly felt hollow and meaningless. Nathan looked around at the impeccably decorated room and felt more alone than ever. The idea of having a child with Amber, once merely inconvenient, now filled him with deep anxiety. How could he father another child when he had abandoned his own? Meanwhile, at Maggie's house, Ethan was working on a new drawing. It was a familiar scene. He and his mother, holding hands, facing a colorful yet sometimes frightening world. Maggie watched her son for a moment, amazed by his progress and creativity. Despite the challenges they faced, they were growing together, strengthening each other. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Maggie asked softly. Ethan looked at her, his eyes shining with a rare understanding. "Us," he simply replied before returning to his work. Maggie's heart swelled with love and renewed determination. No matter what the future held, the lawsuit against the company, the challenges of raising Ethan, the battles still to come, they would face it all together. That night, while Maggie fell asleep with a smile on her face, Nathan lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his luxurious bedroom, feeling the weight of his choices more than ever. The image of Ethan with his trophy remained vivid in his mind, a painful reminder of what he had left behind and what could have been. It was a moment of clarity that Nathan knew he couldn't ignore, yet he wasn't sure how to face. 5 years had passed since the divorce. Now 40, Maggie walked into the packed auditorium of the autism conference. Her blog had grown so much that she had been invited as a speaker. After her presentation, a man approached. "Hi, I'm Jack. Your speech was amazing." Maggie smiled, noticing Jack's kind eyes. "Thank you. Do you work in the field?" "I'm a special education teacher," Jack replied. "Your blog has been a huge help in my work." They continued talking, losing track of time. Jack mentioned his autistic brother, and Maggie felt an immediate connection. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" Jack asked, hesitant. Maggie felt a mix of fear and hope. "I'd love to," she replied, surprised at her own boldness. Meanwhile, Nathan was facing a tense meeting at his office. "Mr. Prescott, we lost the Johnson contract," his assistant informed him. "That's the third one this month." Nathan ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. His focus at work had drastically slipped over the past few months. "Cancel my afternoon appointments," he ordered, feeling overwhelmed. At home, Amber waited for him with an irritated look. "Another canceled meeting, Nathan? What's going on with you?" Nathan ignored her, pouring himself a drink. The emptiness he felt seemed to grow larger every day, despite all the luxury around him. At Ethan's school, now 15 years old, something unexpected happened. A new student, Alex, approached him during lunch. "Hey, I liked your drawing in art class," Alex said, sitting down next to Ethan. Ethan, surprised, muttered a thank you. Over the next few days, the two began regularly eating lunch together. Maggie noticed the change in Ethan. "How was school today?" she asked one evening. "Good," Ethan replied hesitantly. "Alex is cool." Maggie felt her heart warm. It was the first time Ethan had mentioned a friend. Maggie and Jack's first date was in the park. They walked, talking about their experiences with autism. "My brother has taught me so much," Jack shared. "Every autistic person is unique, with their own challenges and talents." Maggie felt tears well up in her eyes. "It's exactly the same with Ethan. Sometimes I feel like no one understands." Jack gently took her hand. "I understand." In the weeks that followed, Jack became a constant presence in Maggie and Ethan's lives. He helped Ethan with socialization techniques, and the progress was noticeable. One night, after Jack had left, Ethan surprised Maggie. "I like Jack," he said simply. Maggie smiled, feeling a mix of joy and apprehension. Was she allowing herself to dream of a future that included Jack? Nathan, on the other hand, was sinking deeper into his depression. On a particularly tough afternoon, he decided to drive through the old neighborhood. That's when he saw them, Maggie and Ethan, holding hands with a man Nathan didn't recognize. They were laughing, looking like a happy family. A wave of jealousy so intense hit Nathan that he had to pull over. The realization of what he had lost left him breathless. At home, Amber confronted him. "Nathan, we need to talk about having a baby." Nathan stared at her, remembering the scene he had just witnessed. "I don't think I'm ready, Amber." "When will you be?" she asked, exasperated. What Nathan didn't know was that Amber had secretly stopped taking birth control months ago, fearing a baby might disrupt her lifestyle. The conversation was just a cover. Meanwhile, Ethan's friendship with Alex faced challenges. Alex had invited him to a party, but the noisy, crowded environment triggered a meltdown in Ethan. "Sorry," Ethan muttered to Alex at school the next day, embarrassed. Alex shrugged. "It's fine. Maybe next time we can do something more low-key." Ethan felt immense relief. Having a friend who accepted him was a new and precious experience. Jack continued to be a crucial support. He helped Maggie develop strategies to guide Ethan through challenging social situations. One evening, after a particularly productive session with Ethan, Jack turned to Maggie. "You're amazing, you know that?" Maggie blushed, feeling her heart race. "You are too." They moved closer, their lips almost touching when Ethan walked into the room. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. Nathan, watching his life slowly fall apart, made a decision. He needed to make changes, to reconnect with what really mattered. Grabbing his phone, he hesitated for a long moment before dialing a number he hadn't used in years. "Hello?" Maggie's voice came through the line, cautious and surprised. Nathan took a deep breath. "Maggie, it's me. Can we talk about Ethan?" 7 years after the separation, Nathan stood in front of Maggie's house, his heart pounding. He had called weeks before, but this was his first attempt at a face-to-face meeting. Maggie opened the door, her face a mix of caution and curiosity. "Nathan," she said, emotionless. "Hi, Maggie. Can I talk to Ethan?" Nathan asked hesitantly. Before Maggie could answer, Ethan appeared behind her. At 17, he was nearly as tall as Nathan. "Ethan," Nathan began, "I know it's been a long time, but—" "Go away," Ethan interrupted, his voice cold. "I don't want to talk to you." The harshness in Ethan's words hit Nathan like a punch. "Son, please, don't call me son," Ethan shot back. "You lost that right a long time ago." With that, Ethan turned and headed upstairs, leaving Nathan stunned at the door. Maggie sighed. "I think you should go, Nathan." Defeated, Nathan returned to his car, the weight of his mistakes heavier than ever. At home, Amber was waiting with surprising news. "Nathan, I'm pregnant." Nathan was shocked. "How? I thought we were being careful." Amber smiled, but there was something off in her eyes. Sometimes it just happens. In truth, Amber was lying. Afraid of losing Nathan, she had faked a positive pregnancy test. In the weeks that followed, Nathan tried multiple times to contact Ethan, sending messages and emails. Sensing the change in Nathan, Amber began subtly interfering. She, accidentally, deleted Ethan's emails, scheduled important meetings on days Nathan planned to visit his son, and constantly reminded Nathan about the baby on the way. Meanwhile, Maggie and Jack decided to get married. The ceremony was intimate, with only close friends and family. "Ethan," Maggie said on the morning of the wedding, "we'd like you to be Jack's best man, only if you want to, of course." To her surprise, Ethan smiled. "I'd like that," he said softly. During the ceremony, Maggie couldn't hold back tears of happiness. Jack squeezed her hand, offering strength and love. Ethan, standing beside them, seemed calm and content. Later at the reception, Jack found Ethan alone. "You doing okay?" he asked gently. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I'm happy for you guys." Jack smiled. "You know, Ethan, you'll always be a priority to your mom and me." Jack's words touched Ethan deeply. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly part of a family. As Maggie's life blossomed, Nathan's continued to spiral downward. His attempts to reconnect with Ethan were constantly frustrated, and Amber's pregnancy was making him more anxious by the day. One day, Nathan found a pregnancy test in the bathroom trash. It was negative. Confused, he confronted Amber. "What is this?" he asked, holding up the test. Amber went pale. I can explain." The truth came out in a rush of accusations and tears. Amber admitted to lying about the pregnancy, terrified of losing Nathan to his old family. "How could you?" Nathan yelled, furious. "I've wasted months trying to reconnect with my son because of your lie." The fight that followed was intense. Amber cried and begged, but Nathan was beyond forgiving. "It's over, Amber," he said, his voice cold. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow." That night, alone in his empty mansion, Nathan felt more lost than ever. He had thrown away his family for a life he now realized was completely hollow. Days later, Nathan received an unexpected call from Maggie. "Nathan," she said, her voice serious, "Ethan is struggling to deal with his feelings about you. The therapist suggested that maybe it's time you two talked." Nathan's heart raced. "Yes, of course. When?" "He turns 18 next week. Maybe you could come to the party?" The thought of Ethan allowing him at his birthday felt like a miracle to Nathan. "I'll be there," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. What Nathan didn't know was that the invitation hadn't come from Maggie or Ethan, but from Jack. Believing that reconciliation might help Ethan heal old wounds, Jack had suggested the idea to Maggie. "Are you sure about this?" Maggie had asked, concerned. Jack nodded. "Ethan needs to face this to move forward, and who knows? Maybe it'll be good for all of you." And so, without Nathan or Ethan's knowledge, the stage was set for a confrontation that could change everything. Ethan's 18th birthday promised to be a turning point for the entire family. Nathan looked at the invitation in his hands, a mixture of hope and fear filling his heart. This could be his last chance to make things right. He wouldn't waste it. Nathan nervously adjusted his tie as he walked into the restaurant. 8 years had passed since the separation, and the weight of that time seemed to press heavily on his shoulders. He spotted them right away. Maggie, Ethan, and Jack were sitting at a table in the corner, chatting animatedly. Nathan hesitated, watching the scene for a moment. Ethan, now 18, was laughing at something Jack had said. His smile was open and relaxed, a look Nathan didn't remember ever seeing before. Maggie was the first to notice his presence. Her smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "Nathan," she called, waving him over. The silence that fell over the table when Nathan sat down was palpable. Ethan stared at his plate, avoiding his father's gaze. "Thank you for inviting me," Nathan said, his voice rough. Surprisingly, it was Jack who broke the ice. "It's good you could come, Nathan. Ethan has some news to share." Ethan glanced at Jack, then at his mother, before finally meeting Nathan's eyes. "I got accepted into art school," he said, his voice low but firm. Nathan felt a mix of pride and pain. "That's amazing, Ethan. Congratulations." The conversation flowed slowly, with Jack and Maggie doing most of the work to keep it going. Nathan watched, amazed, as Ethan interacted with them. There was a confidence, a connection that he had never seen before. At one point, Ethan made a subtle joke that everyone at the table immediately understood. Nathan laughed along, but inside, the realization hit him hard. He didn't know his son anymore. Maggie noticed Nathan's lost look. "Ethan has made incredible progress over the last few years," she said gently. Nathan nodded, swallowing hard. "I can see that. You've done an amazing job." Jack smiled, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Ethan did all the hard work. We just supported him." The way Ethan leaned slightly into Jack's touch didn't escape Nathan's notice. It was a gesture of trust and affection that broke his heart. After dessert, Ethan and Jack stood up to pay the bill, leaving Nathan and Maggie alone at the table. "Maggie, Nathan began, but the words failed him. Maggie looked at him with a mix of compassion and sadness. "I know, Nathan. It's been a hard few years. I'm sorry," he finally managed to say. "For everything." Maggie nodded, accepting his words. Then, to Nathan's surprise, she reached out and lightly touched his hand. "Nathan, there's something you need to know. 2 years ago, I had breast cancer." Nathan felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "What? Maggie, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me?" She shrugged, a sad smile on her lips. "At first, I didn't know how to reach you. Then, well, Jack and Ethan were there. They were my rock." Nathan closed his eyes, guilt consuming him. He hadn't been there when his family needed him most. "It's okay now," Maggie continued. "I'm in remission. But it was a tough time for all of us, especially for Ethan." Nathan looked over to where Ethan was chatting with the waiter. He seemed so well-adjusted, so mature. Maggie followed his gaze, her face softening with pride. "He's incredible, Nathan. He's been through so much, but he never gave up. Jack has been key in all of it." The mention of Jack made Nathan flinch inwardly, but he forced himself to ask, "You seem happy together." "We are," Maggie answered simply. "Jack understands Ethan in a way that, well, in a way that we both struggled to at first. Nathan nodded, the words stuck in his throat. At that moment, Ethan and Jack returned to the table. "It's getting late," Jack said. "Maybe we should head out." Everyone stood up, the moment to leave arriving too quickly for Nathan. He wanted to say more, to explain more, but the words felt inadequate. To his surprise, it was Ethan who spoke. "Dad," he said, the words sounding strange after so long. "Can we talk for a minute? Just the two of us?" Nathan looked at Maggie, who seemed as surprised as he was. She nodded encouragingly. "Of course, Ethan," Nathan replied, his heart racing. "Of course we can." As Maggie and Jack stepped away to give them some privacy, Nathan found himself face to face with the son he had abandoned years ago. What did Ethan want to say? What could Nathan possibly say to make up for years of absence? The air between them was thick with unspoken emotions, with questions left unasked. Nathan took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever came next. Nathan and Ethan sat on a bench in the park near the restaurant. The silence between them was heavy, loaded with years of absence and hurt. "Why now?" Ethan finally asked, his voice tense. Nathan took a deep breath. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Ethan. Leaving you and your mom was the biggest one. I want to try to make things right." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Right? You think you can just come back and fix 8 years of being gone?" Ethan's brutal honesty hit Nathan like a punch. "No, I know I can't, but I want to try to be present now, if you'll let me." The conversation that followed was painful. Ethan poured out years of anger and resentment, while Nathan listened, his heart breaking with every word. "Do you know how many times I needed you?" Ethan said, tears in his eyes. "When kids at school made fun of me, when I had meltdowns and didn't know why, when Mom got sick." Nathan felt the tears run down his face. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I failed you in every way possible." Meanwhile, Amber had found out about Nathan's meeting with his old family. Furious and desperate, she began to plot. "If I tell them about your dirty business, you'll lose everything," she threatened over the phone. "Stay away from them, or I'll ruin you." Nathan, however, was determined not to let Amber interfere again. He blocked her number and focused on rebuilding his relationship with Ethan. In the following weeks, Nathan worked hard to understand Ethan's autism better. He read books, watched documentaries, and even joined a support group for parents. One day, while visiting Ethan at college, Nathan was amazed by his paintings. "Ethan, this is incredible. I had no idea you were this talented." Ethan shrugged, but Nathan could see a faint smile on his lips. "Jack encouraged me to explore art as a form of expression." The mention of Jack made Nathan feel inadequate, but he swallowed his pride. "He seems like a great stepfather to you." "He is," Ethan replied simply. At home, Jack confessed his own fears to Maggie. "Sometimes I feel like I'm competing with a ghost," he admitted. Nathan is Ethan's biological father, and now that he's back, Maggie hugged him tight. "You're the father Ethan chose, Jack. Nothing will change that." The situation became more complicated when Maggie received concerning news from her doctor. There was a suspicion that the cancer might have returned. The news shook everyone. When Nathan found out, he was devastated by not being there the first time. "I want to help," he said to Maggie. "Please, let me do something." Maggie, surprised by Nathan's sincerity, accepted his offer. "Ethan will need all the support he can get," she said. The threat to Maggie's health made Ethan reevaluate his feelings toward Nathan. Although there was still anger, there was also a growing desire for connection. One afternoon, Ethan called Nathan in a panic. "Dad, I don't know what to do. What if Mom?" Nathan calmed him down, feeling a mix of pain and gratitude for being there in this difficult moment. Amber, frustrated by Nathan's lack of response, decided to take action. She sent anonymous emails to Nathan's clients, revealing compromising information about his business. Nathan watched his company start to fall apart, but for the first time in his life, it wasn't his priority. His focus was entirely on Ethan and Maggie. One day, while Nathan was helping Ethan prepare for an important presentation at college, Jack arrived to pick up some things for Maggie. "Thank you for being here for him," Jack said to Nathan, surprising him. "Ethan needs all of us now." Nathan nodded, feeling a new respect for Jack. "Thank you for taking care of them when I couldn't." Ethan's presentation was a success, and seeing the pride in Nathan's eyes meant more to him than he expected. However, the happiness was short-lived. The following week, Ethan faced severe bullying at college. Some classmates, upon discovering his autism, began to mock and exclude him. The situation escalated quickly, leaving Ethan in a crisis. He called Nathan in a state of panic that hadn't been seen in years. "Dad, I can't do this. I want to give up on everything," Ethan sobbed over the phone. Nathan felt his heart tighten. "I'm on my way, son. Hold on." As he rushed to the college, Nathan realized that this crisis would require more than he could offer alone. He would need help from Maggie and Jack. With trembling hands, he made 2 quick calls. It was time for all of them to come together for Ethan, putting aside their differences and fears. As he drove, Nathan reflected on how much his life had changed in the past few weeks. He was about to lose everything he once considered important: money, status, his business. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Ethan's crisis would be a test for all of them. How would they respond? How would it affect the fragile reconnection between father and son? And how would Maggie, in the midst of her own health battle, cope with it all? Nathan gripped the steering wheel, determined. He wouldn't fail Ethan again. No matter the cost, he would be there for his son this time. Nathan arrived at Ethan's college to find a chaotic scene. Ethan was sitting on the hallway floor, rocking back and forth, while security guards and administrators argued heatedly. "What's going on here?" Nathan demanded as he approached Ethan. An administrator turned to face him. "Your son assaulted another student. We're considering expelling him." "That's ridiculous," Nathan replied, stepping protectively in front of Ethan. "My son is autistic. There must have been a misunderstanding." At that moment, Maggie and Jack arrived, rushing down the hallway. "Ethan," Maggie called, kneeling next to her son. "What happened, sweetheart?" Ethan, still visibly shaken, managed to mutter, They wouldn't stop teasing me. I just wanted them to stop." Jack turned to the administrator. "Don't you have anti-bullying policies at this institution?" The administrator looked uncomfortable. "Well, yes, but," Nathan interrupted, his voice firm. "I want to see the security camera footage, now." Using his influence and contacts, Nathan gained access to the recordings. The footage clearly showed Ethan being surrounded and provoked by a group of students before having a meltdown. "This is unacceptable," Nathan declared, confronting the administration. "My son is the victim here, not the aggressor." While Nathan dealt with the administration, Maggie and Jack comforted Ethan, soothing him and offering reassurance. "You didn't do anything wrong, Ethan," Maggie said gently. "We're here for you," Jack added. "We'll get this sorted. You're not alone." It took hours to resolve the situation. Nathan threatened to sue the college for discrimination, while Maggie and Jack worked to educate the administration about autism. In the end, the college agreed not to punish Ethan and to implement an autism awareness program. Exhausted, they all returned to Maggie and Jack's home. Nathan was about to say goodbye when Maggie invited him inside. "You were amazing today, Nathan," she said, surprising everyone, including herself. "Thank you for defending Ethan so fiercely." Nathan felt a wave of emotion. "It's the least I could do after all these years." As Maggie prepared tea for everyone, Nathan and Jack found themselves alone in the living room. "You've done an incredible job with Ethan," Nathan said, breaking the tense silence. I'm grateful you've been there when I wasn't," Jack nodded, struggling with conflicted feelings. "Ethan is an amazing kid. I love him like he's my own." "I know," Nathan replied softly. "And he loves you too. That's clear." Their conversation was interrupted when Ethan entered the room, looking exhausted but calmer. "Dad," he said, looking at Nathan. "Are you going to stick around now?" Nathan felt his heart tighten. "If you want me to stay, yes, I will." Ethan nodded slowly. I think I'd like that." In that moment, Nathan realized the extent of the bullying Ethan had endured over the years. The stories began to come out, years of teasing and isolation that Ethan had faced alone. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Nathan asked, feeling guilty and horrified. Ethan shrugged. "You weren't there." The simple words hit Nathan like a punch. He realized how much he had missed, how much damage his absence had caused. Meanwhile, across town, Amber was making a desperate phone call to Maggie. "Do you think Nathan is a saint?" she spat, her voice laced with venom. "I know things about him that could destroy your precious family." Maggie, weary and stressed, didn't give in to the blackmail. "Do what you want, Amber. We've overcome worse." Back at the house, the tension was starting to ease. Nathan, Maggie, and Jack spoke civilly, united in their desire to protect and support Ethan. But then, without warning, Maggie stumbled. "Maggie!" Jack shouted, rushing to catch her. Nathan and Ethan jumped up in alarm as Maggie collapsed into Jack's arms. "Call an ambulance!" Nathan yelled, rushing to help Jack lay Maggie on the couch. Ethan, panicked, began to rock back and forth. "Mom! Mom!" Nathan turned to his son, forcing himself to stay calm. "Ethan, breathe with me, okay? Your mom's going to be fine. We're here." As they waited for the ambulance, Nathan and Jack exchanged worried looks. Had Maggie's cancer returned? Had the stress of the day been too much? When the paramedics arrived and began treating Maggie, Nathan found himself holding Ethan on one side and Jack on the other. In that moment, all past differences and resentment seemed insignificant. They followed the ambulance to the hospital, an unlikely convoy united by their concern for Maggie. Nathan drove, with Ethan in the passenger seat and Jack right behind them. In the hospital parking lot, before they went inside, Jack stopped Nathan. "No matter what happens in there," he said, his voice firm, "we need to stay united for Ethan and Maggie." Nathan nodded, extending his hand. Together, Jack shook Nathan's hand, sealing a silent pact. With Ethan between them, the three men walked into the hospital, prepared to face whatever came next. The crisis that had begun at the college had grown into something much larger, something that would test the newly formed bonds of this unconventional family. In the hospital waiting room, Nathan, Jack, and Ethan anxiously waited for news about Maggie. Nathan's phone rang, breaking the tense silence. It was his assistant with urgent news. "Mr. Prescott, we're losing clients en masse. Someone leaked confidential information to the press." Nathan felt his stomach drop. Who would do this? The answer came moments later when Amber stormed through the hospital door. "Nathan!" she shouted, drawing stares from the other patients. "How dare you ignore me?" Nathan stood up, trying to calm her down. "This isn't the time or place, Amber." But Amber was out of control. "You think you can just leave me like that? I ruined your precious company." The confession shocked Nathan. "You did what?" Ethan started rocking back and forth, disturbed by the scene. Jack put a protective arm around him, watching the situation unfold. "I sent all your dirty files to your clients," Amber continued, laughing hysterically. "You have nothing now." For the first time, Nathan saw Amber clearly. The beauty that once attracted him now seemed like a mask, hiding a cruel and manipulative nature. "It's over, Amber," Nathan said firmly. "Leave before I call security." Amber laughed bitterly. "You think you can just get rid of me like that? I know all your secrets, Nathan. I'll expose everything." In that moment, Nathan realized he no longer cared about her threats. His company, his money, his reputation, all of it seemed insignificant compared to the family he had nearly lost. "Do whatever you want, Amber," he replied calmly. "I have nothing left to hide." Nathan's calm demeanor seemed to enrage Amber even more. She lunged as if to attack him, but hospital security stepped in, escorting her out. Nathan turned to Jack and Ethan, who watched the scene with a mix of shock and concern. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Nathan said, exhausted. Jack nodded slowly. Are you okay? Nathan laughed without humor. I just lost my company and probably all my fortune. But strangely, I feel free. Ethan, who had remained silent throughout the scene, spoke softly. Dad, are you going to be okay? The genuine concern in Ethan's voice touched Nathan deeply. Yes, son. What really matters is right here in this room. At that moment, a doctor entered the waiting room. Family of Maggie Prescott? Everyone stood up, anxious for news. Mrs. Prescott is stable now, the doctor informed them. The fainting was caused by stress and fatigue, not a recurrence of the cancer. Relief washed over the room. Nathan felt his legs weaken, and Jack grabbed his arm, offering silent support. Can we see her? Ethan asked eagerly. The doctor nodded. Yes, but only for a few minutes. She needs to rest. As they prepared to visit Maggie, Nathan pulled Jack aside. Thank you, he said sincerely, for being there for them when I wasn't. Jack studied Nathan for a moment before replying. You're here now. That's what matters. In the hospital room, Maggie smiled weakly as her family entered. Ethan rushed to hug her, while Jack and Nathan stood by the bedside. The three of you together without fighting? Maggie joked. I must be dreaming. Nathan chuckled softly. Let's just say we had to resolve our differences quickly. Maggie looked at Nathan, noticing something different in his expression. Is everything okay, Nathan? Nathan hesitated, then decided to be honest. Not exactly. I lost my company today. Amber. She sabotaged everything. Maggie frowned, concerned. Oh, Nathan, I'm so sorry. Don't be, Nathan replied, surprised by his own sincerity. I realized that what I truly feared wasn't losing money or status. It was loving unconditionally, without fear. The silence that followed was broken by a sob from Ethan. The tension of the day finally hit him, and he began to shake violently. Ethan? Maggie called, alarmed, trying to sit up. Nathan instinctively wrapped his arms around Ethan. It's okay, son. Let it out. I'm here. Jack and Maggie watched, surprised, as Nathan soothed Ethan with a patience and understanding they had never seen before. Breathe with me, Ethan, Nathan murmured. In and out. That's it. Slowly, Ethan calmed down in his father's arms. Nathan held him, realizing how much he had missed over the years and silently vowing never to abandon his son again. Maggie and Jack exchanged looks, a silent understanding passing between them. The family dynamic was shifting before their eyes. When Ethan finally pulled away, his eyes were red but calm. Thank you, Dad, he said quietly. Nathan felt his heart swell with a love that both frightened and thrilled him. Always, son, always. The moment was interrupted by a nurse coming in to check on Maggie. As she conducted her exams, Nathan found himself reflecting on the day's twists and turns. He had lost his fortune, his company, and faced the true nature of Amber. But there, in that hospital room, with his son in his arms and his ex-wife smiling gently at him, Nathan realized he was gaining something far more valuable. The future was uncertain. There would be legal and financial consequences to face. But for the first time in years, Nathan felt truly at peace. He knew that, no matter what came, he would face it all with his family, by his side. In the weeks following Maggie's hospitalization, the family dynamic continued to evolve. Nathan, determined to keep his promise to be present, spent more time with Ethan. One day, while helping Ethan with a college art project, Nathan noticed his son becoming increasingly agitated. What's wrong, Ethan? Nathan asked gently. Ethan hesitated before responding. I have a presentation tomorrow, in front of the entire class. Nathan immediately understood Ethan's fear. Are you nervous about speaking in public? Ethan nodded, starting to fidget slightly. You know, Nathan said, I used to get nervous before big presentations too. I learned a few techniques that might help. Over the next few hours, Nathan patiently worked with Ethan, teaching him breathing exercises and visualization techniques. Together, they practiced the presentation several times. The next day, Nathan drove Ethan to college. Before Ethan got out of the car, Nathan held his hand. "You've got this, son. I'll be here when you're done." Ethan looked at his dad, a small smile on his lips. "Thanks, Dad." That afternoon, when Ethan came out of class with a radiant smile, Nathan felt a wave of pride and love that nearly overwhelmed him. At home, Maggie and Jack watched the changing relationship between father and son with a mix of joy and apprehension. One evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, the three adults sat down for a much-needed conversation. "Nathan," Maggie began, "I can't deny you've made an incredible effort these past weeks." Nathan nodded, feeling the weight of his past mistakes. "I know I can't erase what I did, but I'm committed to being the father Ethan deserves from now on." Jack, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "And where does that leave me?" The question hung in the air for a tense moment. "Jack," Nathan said seriously, "you were the father Ethan needed when I wasn't here. Nothing can change that. I'm not here to replace you, but to add more support to Ethan's life." Maggie took Jack's hand. "You're my husband and Ethan's stepfather. That's not going to change." Jack took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "Thank you, both of you." The conversation continued late into the night, with the three sharing fears, hopes, and, finally, laughter. Meanwhile, Nathan was facing the public consequences of his divorce and Amber's actions. His business reputation was in tatters, and he was facing legal investigations. One day, after a particularly difficult meeting with his lawyers, Nathan had an epiphany. "I want to use what's left of my fortune for something meaningful," he announced to Maggie and Jack. "I'm thinking about starting a foundation to support families with autistic children." Maggie looked at him with surprise and admiration. "Nathan, that's incredible," Jack agreed. "That could make a real difference for so many families." Nathan smiled, feeling truly at peace with the decision for the first time in years. "It's the least I can do after everything." Inspired by Nathan's change, Maggie shared her own news. "I've decided to change careers," she said. "I'm going to study law. I want to specialize in disability rights." Nathan and Jack embraced her, proud of her strength and determination. As the days passed, the new family dynamic solidified. Nathan became a constant yet respectful presence in Ethan's life. Jack, for his part, found security in his role as Maggie's husband and Ethan's stepfather. Ethan, watching the change in his family, began to open up more. He shared his hopes and fears with all three adults, trusting each of them in different ways. One night at dinner, Ethan nervously cleared his throat. "I have something to say," he announced. All eyes turned to him, expectantly. I've decided that I want to move to campus next semester," Ethan said, his words rushing out. The silence that followed was deafening. Maggie was the first to recover from the shock. "Ethan, are you sure? It's a big change." Ethan nodded. "I know, but I think I'm ready. And I want to try." Nathan, overcoming his initial surprise, felt a wave of pride. "Son, if that's what you want, we'll support you," Jack added. "We'll be here for you, no matter what happens." Ethan looked at the three adults, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you. All of you." In that moment, looking at her brave son and the two men who loved him in different but equally deep ways, Maggie felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude. This unconventional family, forged through pain, forgiveness, and love, was finally complete. Nathan took Ethan's hand. "I'm so proud of you, son. You're stronger and braver than I ever was." Jack placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We'll help you every step of the way." Maggie, with tears in her eyes, looked at the three most important men in her life. "We're a family," she said softly. "No matter what." Ethan smiled, feeling truly accepted and loved. "Yes," he agreed. "We are." Ethan's decision marked a new chapter for all of them. It was a test of their new dynamic, a challenge they would face together. As the night went on, the four of them continued to talk, making plans, expressing concerns, and, above all, supporting one another. Nathan, looking at his family gathered around him, felt a mix of gratitude and determination. He had been given a second chance, an opportunity to be the father and the man he should have always been. The university auditorium was packed for Ethan's graduation. Nathan, Maggie, and Jack sat together in the front row, united in their pride. When Ethan stepped onto the stage to receive his diploma, the three of them stood up, applauding enthusiastically. To everyone's surprise, Ethan was invited to give a brief speech. "When I started college, I could barely look people in the eye," Ethan began. "Today, I stand here thanks to the support of three incredible parents. My mom, who never gave up on me, my stepdad, who taught me about unconditional love, and my dad, who showed me that it's never too late to do the right thing." Silent tears ran down Maggie's face, while Jack and Nathan struggled to hold back their emotions. After the ceremony, Nathan announced the creation of the Prescott Foundation for Autistic Families, with Maggie and Jack as partners. Later, in a private moment, Ethan shared his plans to use his art to raise awareness about autism. Nathan reflected on his journey. "I spent years accumulating wealth, but the true legacy lies in the relationships we build." Maggie smiled. "We are proof that families come in all forms." Jack nodded. "And that love can overcome even the hardest mistakes." Ethan looked at the three of them. "We're imperfect, but perfect together." They embraced, symbolizing forgiveness, growth, and unconditional love. Though the future was uncertain, they were ready to face it together as the family they had become. Dear friends, if this story touched your heart, don't hesitate to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion is valuable to us. If you want more inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Always remember, just like Nathan, Maggie, Jack, and Ethan discovered, true love has the power to heal wounds, overcome obstacles, and create families in the most unexpected and beautiful ways.